And we are live. You can catch us on Twitch, Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, and Instagram. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll be right back with you, Howlers. Right back. Go ahead. How's over Baz? I'm Jacob Casas.
I'm Rico Savage.
And we have a very special guest today. We got two. We got a returning guest as well. But we got Terry from King of the Cage right now on How's Over Baz. We appreciate you coming on.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And we got Eddie Millis.
Hey, how you doing?
So, yeah, we wanted to kind of jump in. So, King of the Cage, what's going on? You guys are making a comeback, huh?
Yeah, we've been out of the Southern California market for a little while. It's about 18 months. I've done 4 or 5 shows a year since 1999 in the Southern California market. Started off at Soboba Casino in 98 and continued to run shows there. Eventually, San Manuel took us away, and we ended up at San Manuel for about 5 years. And then San Manuel shut the bingo hall down during the time. And when they shut the bingo hall down, we ended up at Citizens Bank. Citizens Bank, after COVID, tried to raise the rent by $80,000.
Oh, wow.
We had to make a move out to the San Manuel Stadium in San Bernardino. We're pretty excited about it. Going back outdoors is kind of going out to the roots of King of the Cage in the beginning.
So, yeah, go ahead.
You know, I think it'd be not fair for him to tell you the actual beginning.
Yeah, I've been wanting. That's what we were
Yeah,
gonna, yeah,
because
let's
I met this guy at the gym, and he was like really into what we were doing with the fight team, the Shark Tank. And we were fighting in Mexico. And he's like, I want to come check it out. So I'll let you take it from there.
So, I was very interested. I'd seen some of the videos from Hoist Gracie, and I thought this stuff was great. Met Eddie, found out he was training and he was teaching people, and guys were fighting. They were really the only guys in the area that were fighting. They were fighting down in Mexico. So I went down to one of the fights, and it was in a highlight court down in Mexico, and they had a veterinarian at ringside and an elephant chained up in the parking lot. And the guys were fighting for like $50 and $75. And when Eddie's guys started beating everybody down there in Mexico, in the main event, one of the guys bit Tony Patera in the fight. And I said, there's just got to be a better way to do this. We got to get our guys that are top-level guys like the Shark Tank and keep them from fighting in the smaller stuff and find a platform for them to be able to expose what they've learned.
And those were the brutal days.
Oh, it was so fun.
So I used to train with Eddie. I trained him for years, and yeah, those days, even before I started training, they were real brutal. So you were around during the brutal days. 'Cause as I was in high school when the real brutal days were going on. Because he came on the show talking about the fights in Mexico.
Well, then you remember some of the warriors like Tony Patera and Victor Hunsaker and Phil Ortiz. I mean, everybody.
Phil was on the show.
Phil was on the show.
Yeah.
Oh my! I can't believe I didn't watch it. Phil's one of my favorite guys of all time.
It was like our third episode that we ever had, and they came on, him and Phil. Yeah, it was crazy.
It's like Cobretti. Yeah, the thing is, though, when King of the Cage, when Terry came in and did it, at least, the mats were right, the surface. I mean, in Mexico, the other time, remember we were fighting in a cockfighting arena?
Yes.
And it was wet.
You went to them? You actually?
Yeah.
Hey, this was wild.
Well, that's what gave me the idea. Eddie was actually my partner on the first King of the Cage. We called it Empire One. It was done in a tennis court in Corona. I campaigned the Athletic Commission for probably a good year and a half to let me throw a show. You've got all these guys running rogue, throwing shows, and you're not stopping them. And I've got a doctor. I've got a real, the guys that are the referees for the event. I had the insurance, national certified, Scott Davis. Remember Scott Davis from back in the day? I had everything covered so it could run like a pro show and not just something somebody's throwing in the back of a bar somewhere, like the Lover shows back in the days.
But, like they got rated.
Yep.
The shows got rated, like in San Bernardino. What was that one at the Safari Bar, Safari Clubs, whatever? Halfway through the show, 20 cops were outside.
It almost used to be like a fight club?
It was literally a fight club. We would actually get told the location changed 2 or 3 times before we got to the event. Like within the last 2 or 3 hours, they would change locations just to keep the police out of it. So I finally pushed super hard, got the athletic commission to say, okay, we know you're going to do it the right way. We'll let you go ahead and do it. Eddie and I got together, grabbed a tennis court in Corona on a 12-step recovery ranch, tarped up the whole tennis court in there, put a boxing ring in the middle of the ring, of the tennis court, and we brought out 800 people. We sold it out. Judo, Gene LaBelle was the ref. Carl Parisian's first pro fight. Victor Hensecker fought. Javi Vasquez's first professional fight.
Phil Ortiz
was on the card.
Sorry, we're live. Whenever we have difficulties, we just kind of keep going, and I'm just having to turn it up a little, just a little bit.
Yeah.
Just a little bit. Cool. Yeah, but that's wild, man. I mean, tennis courts.
And then Eddie was so focused on the Shark Tank, I just kind of kept running with it. And he wanted to be more involved as, let me bring my team in, let me show guys how to dominate in mixed martial arts. So I took that demo tape, went to 63 casinos, and Saboba finally gave us a chance to put on a show.
Yeah, not because he's sitting next to me and we're good friends, but the truth is, like, Terry's work ethic was like unstoppable. That goes to, like, if you really want to do something, you got to do it. I remember you with your notepads, the yellow legal pads, writing everything down, man.
Nothing's changed.
Yeah.
You're funny you say that because I was writing one not 20 minutes ago before I got here.
So there's nothing like, for me, I had to, you chase 2 rabbits, you go home hungry. I had to focus on my gym, the fighters, training, my training, and let Terry do his thing, and he ran with it, and look where we're at,
But we both ended up working together. Even though we weren't doing the same thing, we were working together. I had a part, he had a part.
Yeah.
And, I mean, he brought so many top fighters into King of the Cage, and, he's actually going to be the first trainer inducted into the King of the Cage Hall of Fame in October.
That's dope. That's so cool, man.
We're loving it now, but we figured
that's cool.
We'd shock him on the show right now.
Yeah.
That's cool. I mean, so how is, because your first fight is going to be in June, right? When you guys come back?
Yes.
So how does that, how has everything been, because the years have passed, so many things have happened, these laws and all this stuff's crazy. How has it changed from then to now?
I've still been doing, since COVID, I do about 20 shows a year.
Oh, okay.
But I've been out of Southern California for about 2 years now.
Oh,
but,
okay.
I mean, I consistently do shows all over the country and international shows. I did the first show in Singapore, the first show in Thailand.
Wow.
One of the first shows in England, Australia.
Wow, this is big.
All over the place. I've done 16 countries now and close to 900 events.
Wow.
So
you haven't stopped then?
No, we haven't stopped. We just stopped in Southern California. But that's really the home. That's where that's our foundation. We have all the best talent locked up in Southern California, so it's our biggest show when we hold a Southern California show like this.
Yeah. This is going to be amazing. This is going to be wild.
Yeah, June 1st.
Yeah, June 1st is when it comes. Man.
Everybody's been waiting.
It has.
Is the card already out? Is the card already out?
The card is out, yes.
Why, you want to fight?
No, I'm ready. I'm ready.
Yeah, I mean, so King of the Cage. I mean, I grew up going to King of the Cage events. It was wild. I loved King of the Cage. Everybody did.
Yeah.
So many people that I know, like, oh yeah. I mean, they always talk about how you're a nice guy. In a brutal sport. You know what I'm saying? So everybody that I've known that knows who he is. When I told him he was coming on, oh yeah, I know him. It was just crazy. How are you able to be, especially the very beginning, the sport was so brutal with the fighters and everything. How are you able to even organize all that with all these people?
Well, the guys were so hungry. I mean, here was the big thing. Southern California had the best talent. But Iowa and the Midwest, one of my friends and Eddie's friend, Monty Cox, was running shows all over the place in the Midwest. So the guys in the Midwest, the Matt Hughes and the Rich Franklin and the Pat Miletich and the Bobby Hoffman and Jens Pulver, all these guys had a chance to get 15 or 20 fights in before the Southern California guys had a chance to get fights. So when they popped up and they started dominating at the top level of the sport, people assumed they were the best fighters because that's what they saw on TV. Nobody else had a television platform at that time. And what we did as a group, because I couldn't have done it without all the clubs that were involved, I mean, I was going to each gym. Some of them were in, Rick Lucero was in his garage, and Chris Brennan was in his garage, and Eddie was one of the few guys that actually had a real prestigious school. But everybody wanted to compete. What we did was we gave them a television platform to be seen, and a platform where they could get enough experience in a short period of time to be able to compete with the top guys. I knew we had the top guys here. I've seen them train. I've seen the guys train, and I realized where we were at. We just needed an opportunity for the Southern California, Northern California area guys to be able to compete, and then eventually it just went international.
Why don't you share with everyone like some of the guys that have actually come through and got their start in King of the Cage and look where they're at now?
It's not even as much a start, but having guys at the prime. We were never looking to be a qualifier for anybody.
Right.
Got guys like, oh man, we want to get a show and we want to get our guys into the UFC. It was never about that. I was running a show that was competitive. I could never go to a television platform and say, you know what, I got the best guys that aren't good enough to be in the UFC. I would tell them I have guys that not only are the best guys, but I have some of the best guys in the world right now. I mean, Uriah Faber was with King of the Cage till he was about 27 years old. By the time he got to the Versus and the WEC and the UFC, he was kind of old for that age, for that weight class. At 135, you're peaking at 23 to 27 years old.
Yeah.
By the time you're 27 at that light weight class, you're on the older edge.
Well, and then the fighters are fighting so much more like hurt too.
Yes.
So you're not getting the best out of them.
That's
know?
correct.
Well, you're always hurt.
Yeah.
Like, if
An
somebody's
80% day
100%,
is a very good day in MMA.
Yeah. I think Frank Shamrock told me in Hawaii, he's like, you're 50% of the time you're hurt. Something like that. You just got to deal with that.
Just fight hurt.
Frank Shamrock said something one time that stuck with me for a long time. And I asked him, when you're beating up on somebody and you see them and the ref hasn't stepped in quick enough, do you ever get the feeling to slow down and maybe back off a little bit? And he said, I did it one time. He said, I did it with John Lober. I backed off and I ended up getting injured and lost a fight because of it. Wow. And never again. He says his goal now is to go out and finish people as quick as possible. That way they take less punishment and less damage, and he gets the fight over, and he has less of a chance to become injured himself. I thought that was something that stuck with me for a long time.
Yeah.
Don Wilson said, if he fought a friend, because in the kickboxing world, he often fought friends. He said if he knocked him out quick, he was doing him a favor.
There's a lot of camaraderie with all the people that started from back then, because you look out, right, you see people, they're pissed off that they're not getting this amount of money. We didn't give a shit about the money. We're happy to have a platform like his where we could fight, where the press saw it, we get some notoriety, we could get some fights under our belt, and it wasn't about the money.
It was interesting when you come home and you just fought on national TV,
right?
And you come home and you won a big fight, and let's say you went to Michigan, the Soaring Eagle, or you went to Chinook Winds Casino up in Lincoln City, Oregon, or you went to Foxwoods in Connecticut. Wherever we went, some of the really big fights we had, even in Albuquerque, New Mexico, at Santa Ana Star and the casinos out there. So it was all over the place. But to be able to win on television and have come home, in the beginning, I was with Eddie over at the Scoreboard. Back in the day when we were watching the early fights, and then after the UFC played, we would throw the tape in from the last King of the Cage on the big screen and watch the King of the Cage. So it was like UFC and King of the Cage night in the early days.
Yeah.
So I wanted to kind of, because House Over Baz is basically, it means leaders over followers, right? So we bring a lot of entrepreneurs in here, people that lead the way in things that they do, and you guys started this whole thing of this platform. I mean, from the beginning. I mean, it's how does that feel? Like coming into a sport like this that you didn't even think it was going to be what it was at the very beginning, and now it is what it is now. How does that feel to be part of that?
I felt like I saw the potential for this sport. I could tell it had a Grateful Dead cult-like type following. And it was just a matter of somebody having enough money to push it back over the threshold. The buys in pay-per-view in the early days showed that it was a shooting star. It was going to be something for the ages. And then they found a way to hold it down. And during that time of holding it down, where UFC lost their pay-per-view contract, and only DirecTV kept it on the air. So with only DirecTV at the time, DirecTV was only going to about 20 million homes. In Demand, which was the pay-per-view end of it, was going to about 150. They had lost 85% of their viewing platform, and at that point, they had 12 to 1,500 people showing up in the fights, and we were doing 5,000-6,000 people at Saboba on a regular basis, and I just felt there was an opportunity to keeping it going, fight after fight. By show 6, Soaring Eagle from Michigan came to me and said, we'd love to start putting on shows. And I grew up in Michigan. I'm like, oh, that's great. By show 8, Calusa Casino in Williams, California wanted to come in. By show 10, California, Nevada, and New Jersey got together and created what was called the Unified Rules. And they took a combination of rules from King of the Cage, from the UFC, and from the IFC, and created what they called the Unified Rules out of those 3 sports. We created the 5-minute round. 5-minute round was never in the UFC. That was a King of the Cage. We also created the cage height. Yeah, there's a lot of things back in the early days that when they were trying to put something together. Once the Unified Rules, California thought they were going to run with it, but it got held up in California. New Jersey and Nevada ran with it. So the Carano family came to me, which was Gina Carano's father, Glenn, the football player from the Cowboys, and said, hey, we'd love you to come up to Reno and start putting on shows. So I've been putting on 4 shows a year in Reno since 2003. Yeah. I'm still in Reno right now. So, 20 years later and 80 shows later, we still do 4 shows a year in Reno right now. And it just took off from there. I mean, once we were in 4 or 5 casinos, we kind of had that, this is the company to call when you want your casino filled up.
What do you think it is having that longevity like that, like consistency?
When you wake up in the morning, you have to love what you do. It doesn't matter what you do, you have to love it.
Yeah.
And if you get into something that's kind of sexy that people kind of look at, go, that'd be really cool to get in, it's even harder. I always thought that if I just shoveled shit or something for a living, it would be so much easier because nobody would be competing with it. Nobody would be running around bragging about doing something like that. So you just really have to love what you do, and you never feel like you work a day in your life if you love what you do. And that's such a true statement. When I get up and I think about fights, I get excited. Yeah. I don't even realize it's work until at the end of the show, and then I'm like, oh my God, that was a lot of work.
Yeah, I mean, it's always the end of the show.
People don't realize really how hard it is. And like in the early days, we had to deal with the California Athletic Commission, which really didn't know what the hell they were doing, just being honest. So you got to deal with the commission. Then you got to deal with the fighters and their managers, which is a whole different thing. And then you got to deal with the venue and their insurance and what they want, right?
And then the sponsors.
And then the sponsors.
And then the TV people.
Yeah.
And what your job as a promoter is to take all these people, because they all have different ideas, and make them play in the sand together. I mean, that's really what it is. You have to be able to make the people from the casino agree with the sponsors. And the television people have to be on board. Because if they don't agree on everything, it's almost impossible to run anything, And
then fighters drop out. And with California, you have to have so many rounds, right? Still per card. So can you imagine at the last minute, like trying to get fighters and get their medicals done, which is a whole, I'll let Terry talk about that. But like, if you're really on the inside of it and you know how much work goes into this, it ain't like he just wakes up and like, I'm going to promote,
Is it harder now or than it was back then, or is it easier, or is it the same, or just as much?
It's the same. It's different things that are tougher now.
Yeah.
Sanctioning, the athletic commission stepping involved. Sometimes I go to athletic commissions and they want me to use their referees that are inferior to my referees that might have 1,500 fights under their belt, and they want me to use a guy with 6 or 7, and yet I'm paying to put this on television.
Crazy.
And I take that chance of putting on a big fight. It could cost me $25,000 or $50,000 to put on a fight, an individual fight, and I've got a guy with no experience, but they want to get that experience. So again, when you're dealing with that, it's, hey, I'm glad to do that, but make sure you use those guys on my undercard. Don't try to put my main events in there with a fight. Yeah, it gets really expensive to have to redo something because they made a mistake.
Damn.
Wow, that seems like it'd be a hard thing to deal with, because when it comes to things like that, like, you have no control over that. like you have to just listen to what they say, and you could try to fight it, and like you said, put them on smaller cards. But I mean, that's gonna mess up your whole. How do you deal with that? Because it can mess up your whole system.
Here's a great example, and I have the perfect example of it. The most famous referee, probably of the early days, is Big John McCarthy.
Yeah.
Often considered to be one of the best referees of all time. Most people today would say Herb Dean and Beltran have surpassed
Herb
them
Dean,
considerably. I had Herb Dean. He was shadowing Larry Landless in the beginning for me at King of the Cage before he got his opportunity.
Oh, damn.
And when Herb started, he became considerably better than even his teacher, Larry Landless. And I told him, listen, someday you're going to pass him, but my commitment is to Larry because he's been there since the start.
Whoa.
If something doesn't happen or something doesn't go right, you're going to be that guy, but eventually you're going to be one of the best in the sport. So, I was at a show in San Bernardino at San Manuel Casino, and I had a fight that I was really concerned with. And McCarthy is really headstrong on his way. And again, this is not anything detrimental. He's a fantastic referee. He's always been one of the best. But he really lets people fight on the ground a little bit longer than I'm comfortable with. Mm-hmm. And the crowd, jiu-jitsu is great. Wrestling's great. It's a part of the sport. But in the end, people really want to see two guys go toe-to-toe, trade, and see one guy, end up being the champion. So I was concerned that one of the guys in the main event on the title fight had the potential to stall a little bit from the top position and create a boring fight. So I went to the head of the athletic commission at the time, Andy Foster, and I said, Mike Beltran is really my guy. I mean, I'm doing this special on Spanish TV. He's my head guy there. You have John set up as the main event for the fight. I said, I need you to go with Mike Beltran. I really can't let that. And he's like, you're kidding me. You're turning down John McCarthy as the main event? And he's like a big John McCarthy groupie. I mean, he loves John. Yeah. I said, no, Beltran is the guy. I said, if Herb was here, it would be Herb. I said, but Beltran is the guy. I need Beltran in there tonight. So I went and I paid double to John McCarthy just out of respect because he is that famous and that good, and asked him to step aside so Mike Beltran could rough the main event. And he killed it that night. I had a phenomenal main event, and he's been one of my go-to guys since. Herb has been my number one guy from day one. He started with me. He comes back anytime I need him, and him and Beltran are just the golden boys.
I trained Mike for a while. Beltran.
Yes. Yep.
He gets
in
it.
Whittier, right?
Yeah, he
Yep.
gets it.
Yep.
He gets it. I love referees like John.
Yep.
All of them. They all, John, Herb, Mike, they all train.
Yep. Herb fought for me.
Yeah.
I mean, it would make sense.
I mean, if you fight, you get an understanding.
That makes sense, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like like from Fight Club. It's such a great quote. How much can you know about yourself if you've never been in a fight, right? But the same thing is like just to be a great ref. I know we're going off subject, but yeah, the fact that these guys actually train, they get it.
We got to really be dialed into what you're doing to see all that, because I mean, a lot of people are not just going to see that. You're so dialed in. You're so in love with what you're doing that you notice everything. You depict everything. And I feel like that's what a true entrepreneur does, a true businessman. Like, they're going to see everything, the little cracks that nobody else can see.
Well, that's the key. The key is really to sit there and, I mean, I learned it as a kid growing up playing hockey my whole life and golf and stuff like that, is being able to see things happen before they, if you can play something out enough times, you've kind of seen most of the situations that are going to happen. And if you're prepared for those situations, you handle them a lot better than if you have to guess at them.
Yeah.
Well, I'm really excited to see King of the Cage come back out here. I'm so hyped about it. And
you're going, right?
Yeah, man, I'm going.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
But I want to
get you front row seats yet?
Oh, man, I would love to,
Yeah,
man.
done.
I would love to.
Awesome.
Well, I have something
Any
to
of you
talk
guys?
to you about
Awesome.
anyway about him.
Thank you.
Which is really cool. But we'll talk off the air.
Okay. Yeah, I really want to see, like, okay, what I wanted to ask you, though, is King of the Cage is already big, right? But I want to see, where do you want this to go now from here? From this moment that you're at, what are you looking to do?
Well, I just give you a quick rundown right through the. We started putting on those fights. We did the fight in the tennis court. They denied us doing the second fight. They said, hey, I battled that for another 6 months. I got the state to say, hey, if you go to an Indian reservation, we won't hold it against you. I said, would you put that in writing? That took another 4 months to get that letter from the Rob Lynch saying that if you go to an Indian reservation, I won't hold it against you and I won't hold it against the casino when we sanction these events. And then he asked me on the side as a favor, hey, can you start training my referees? I said, yeah, I'll give them the opportunity. At that time, it was Cecil Peoples and Doc Hamilton and some of the other guys that were referees for kickboxing to bring them into the MMA to get them ready so that when California ran through and sanctioned the events, they would have trained guys. So we pushed through that. I finally got it back on there. The Indian casinos were helping out incredibly with the shows, and it basically took off from there. I sold it in 2007 to a company called Pro Elite. If you guys remember the Kimbo Slice fights back in the day, they wrote a giant check for it, and everybody was happy. They paid half up front, and they were supposed to pay 20% of the balance each year for the next 5 years. Well, when the balance didn't come back and they couldn't pay the first year, I took the company back. Wow. I gave them 6 extra months to make the payment, and when they couldn't make it, I had what was called a security interest filing. And each company that's a public company is allowed to have only one. We requested it before we made the deal with them, and then I got the company back for about 4 cents on the dollar for what they gave me. At that time, we lost the sponsorship Rockstar, so it kind of hurt us a little bit. But within a year, we were back up on track. We were going again. A year after that, I caught wind that Lucas Oil was going to buy MAV TV, so I started giving my footage to MAV TV, but only my old stuff. Lucas Oil buys MAV TV. I get the call from Lucas Oil, hey, do you guys want to start putting on more fights and you want to give us your better footage? And I said, it just takes a check. Went to Lucas Oil, cut a deal with Lucas Oil. They said, the only concern we have if we commit to you doing these 40 shows a year, because you're the only guy that can do a show every week, what if somebody comes in and wants to buy it? I said, I'll make you a deal. I'll sell you half of the company 1 year from now for what the company's worth today if you commit to this 5-year television contract. And they did.
Wow.
So a year after that, Lucas Oil bought half of the company. So now I'm partners with Lucas Oil. So it's been an interesting run all the way through. At this point, the comeback off of COVID was a little tough. Sponsors ran a little bit. But it looks like I have some pretty good stuff lined up by the end of the year. I'd like to get back to doing 30 or 40 shows a year.
Jeez.
And probably do like 12 live.
That's wild. I mean, you know what? You're gonna hear something crazy. I swear, I have it on my email right now. I hit up Lucas Oil to be a sponsor for the show. I haven't gotten a response yet, but I'm like tripping out. Like, man, those advertisers you got, it's just wild.
Yeah, I mean, I've had Lucas Oil, I've had Rockstar Energy Drink. I wasn't putting, and that's some of the mistakes that the small promoters make. They'll run and put Millie's Diner and Z's Bail Bonds and all these small companies up there, and then they'll go after the big companies. Big companies don't want to share with local. If you look local, you're going to stay local on your mat. And there was about 1.5 to 2 years where I went with no sponsors just because I didn't want to take the small money. And eventually I started getting to the bigger sponsors. And I'm working, I've had General Tire, I've had Pharmacy RX. I've had some really big companies worldwide, Tapatio,
Yeah.
So, but I have
I'm
a
in
couple
the diesel
big ones.
business, so that's why I went after Lucas Oil.
Makes sense.
Yeah, so I was like,
They make a great additive. Their additive is actually fantastic.
Yeah. That's wild, man. You got. I mean, well, that's what you do, right? You were the promoter. You were going after all these sponsors and advertisers, and that's what makes the events, right? That's how you push this whole thing.
It's getting the sponsors, getting the fighters, the crowd, the sponsors, the casinos, the TV people, all to play in the sand together.
Yeah, so it's going to be like a celebration too. Like June 1st, it's going to be great. Like, because you show up, you see everybody that you know, everybody's happy, the crowd's pumped up. There's some great fights on the card. I actually trained a few of the guys on there. And it's been a long time coming. So I know I'm excited.
Edson Gomez.
It's phenomenal.
Him versus Richie is. I mean, that's a.
Yeah.
Those are two guys that both want to prove they're just tougher than each other. It's like everything's going to go out the window. It's going to be the guy that has the best jaw is going to win that fight because they're going to test each other quite a bit. Yeah. And that's kind of the route that I go. It was never about finding the best fighter. If I could find the best fighter that was a great promoter, that was a great. that was a great crowd pleaser,
Yeah.
like Crazy Horse and
David
Charles
Gomez.
Bennett, David Gomez. That was fantastic. It was
Yeah.
about finding the guy that put on the best performance and pleased the crowd every night. And those are the guys that built King of the Cage.
And that's probably a reason why some of these pop-up brawl fights, you
Yeah.
know, where you fight somebody, just you box them, they're doing well because people want to see that.
Yeah.
They want to see that. I mean, as a trainer and somebody that's been in the sport since 95, something like that, I get tired of just seeing people just laying on the ground and holding on to each other and
Yeah.
so anyway.
That's what I wanted to see though. So what are you doing? What do you want to see this go now? Because you're already huge.
The
You know what I
evolution of
mean?
it.
But it's like to see. I mean, I keep thinking back to so many shows I've been to. You know, as a kid, and it's like where. So now at this moment, because you're just coming back out here, where do you want to see this go from here?
You know, I'd like to be back in every market. I mean, it was really the COVID that pushed us down. 8 years prior to COVID, I did more than 40 events a year, and now I'm down around 15. I need to get back up to 40. But by doing 40 events a year, I can produce a 2-hour television show, 50 weeks during the year, and then 2 weeks during the year we run like best knockouts or best. I can run a television program every week. Nobody else has the ability to do that, including the UFC.
Can I tell you what I want?
Yeah,
I want to see 4 shows in Southern California a year.
4 shows a year.
And you'll see that.
Absolutely.
You'll see that in 25.
Yeah.
I actually have.
That's my wish list to him. 4 shows a year, so we have something to look
So
forward
in
to.
the business, you only get so many shows a year, or you only can do so many fights a year.
Well, I mean, I think
Or like allowed?
Terry will answer, but for fighters, I mean, fighting every 3 months is probably about right. You can't fight
After a fight, 3 months off. 3 months off.
No, you're still training. I mean,
Yeah.
you might have a week off, but every 3 months, I think it's up. That's about right. I mean, unless you're in Thailand and you're coming up tight, those guys fight every couple of weeks.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
So after every fight, you have to wait a certain amount of time to fight again.
It depends.
You might wait a week or two to let your body heal.
Oh shit! So you can fight right away if you wanted to.
Yeah, a lot of ice. It depends how much damage you take in the fight, and not how much you get hit. It's
Yeah.
sometimes how much hitting you do. You know, your shins and your knees and your
Yeah.
elbows and your hands after a fight of beating on somebody.
Beat you up too. So,
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of people don't see the end of it. How many times Eddie's had to go to a hospital after a fight and sit with his guy all night. I mean, I was with Bobby Hoffman one night in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and walked into the room and he's laying on the floor. And I'm like, "What's wrong?" He's like, "Oh man, I'm hurt a little bit." But I said, "You gonna be all right?" He goes, "Yeah, I might need to see a doctor." But I ain't no pussy. You know, he wanted to say that. He wanted to let me know.
Sure you know.
Found out he had a punctured lung.
Oh,
And he had like 2 quarts of blood in his left lung. And it was like, it's a good thing we got him to the hospital at that time.
I mean, like, we're not doctors, but I can't tell you how Eric Paulson showed me this. The guys we would be sparring and somebody would break their nose and it's over here, and Eric's like, "Come on," and sets the nose. And we sometimes as trainers too in the gym, we set noses, we stitch cuts with super glue. I've probably done 200 cuts with super glue, so I'm well versed at that.
How they used to say? How they used to say? Are you hurt or are you injured? Like which one is it? Like you know what I mean?
Yeah, but there was a lot of bravado back then. Again, I love the old days because it wasn't about the money.
Yeah.
It wasn't about picking your opponent and being safe, which is the case.
Yeah, there was a lot more love for the game in
competition
in
and the love
the
for it.
early days. The guys were physically tougher back then.
Money
But
changes
because,
everything.
because they had to be.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
The fear of losing today has become so much greater than then. I mean,
So you think it's more running around the ring now and on the ground instead of standing up and
I believe there is. There's more dancing, and I always believed in a little bit smaller cage. I mean, I started with an 18-footer, which I think now is a little too small. UFC uses a 32-foot cage. Some of the other companies, WEC, I think was a 30. Some of the Florida organizations were, but I really think a 24-foot cage is best. It's you have enough room to move around, but you don't have enough room to run and hide.
yeah.
And when a fight happens and somebody gets taken to the ground, they don't often fight on the ground in the middle. They have to hop
go
all
to
the
the
way over to
cage.
the fence
Yeah.
to look for that position. Where in a smaller cage, they don't have to go as far, and the action starts a lot faster, and they spend less energy trying to get into a position to strike, so they can strike right away.
Wow. It's see, even seeing stuff like that to notice, hey, there's a lot less room to go straight to the cage. That's like you're thinking, about the audience, what they should see to make sure that this fight looks great the whole time. I love that. Like I said, you're dialing in, depicting everything.
When I walk into a venue before the fight starts and the lights are on the cage, I still get the same feeling that I got from day one.
Amen.
And that's it's special. You walk in and you see that, and it's like two guys are going to go toe to toe inside that cage.
Well, it's like being home.
It's
right?
crazy. It's crazy,
Yeah.
but it's love. It's life. You know.
Yeah, it's like I'm home.
Yep.
I'm home. I'm excited.
So Eddie, what are you doing in this right now? What's going on
Well,
with you?
I got asked by Terry to become a commentator, so I will be commentating the fights.
June 1st?
Yeah,
Yep.
That's dope.
yeah.
That's crazy.
So
I've had Don Wilson and Eddie Bravo. I mean, Joe Rogan was a groupie to Eddie Bravo in the early days. I mean,
Yeah.
Joe Rogan's famous now.
Yeah.
But when Eddie Bravo, his jiu-jitsu instructor, was up hosting King of the Cage in the early days, it was Joe Rogan begging me to be at the side of the cage to be able to sit with Eddie Bravo, telling me someday my dream is to do this.
Yeah.
So obviously he's
You never
lived his
know.
dream time and time again.
and Eddie did great too. I thought Eddie was a great announcer.
Eddie was great.
Yeah.
He was, his love for jiu-jitsu was a little strong, but outside of that, he was a fantastic host. Don Wilson was very good. His
Yeah.
love for stand-up was a little too strong, so it kind of balanced out Eddie.
Yeah.
You had all jiu-jitsu and all stand-up. Don couldn't talk about anything on the ground, but he loved talking about stand-up.
Yeah.
But with Eddie being able to plug Eddie in now, I really feel like we've got somebody that knows both worlds.
Yeah.
He was ahead of his time in a lot of areas. He had the jiu-jitsu. I believe he started with Pedro Carvalho back in the day, but he was ahead of time with everybody with the kickboxing. His kickboxing skills were on point. His athletic conditioning was better than everybody else's, and he was in Japan and studying. I know he went over to Europe to study the kickboxing with some of
Peter Aerts.
the Glory team, and his his leg locks that he learned in Japan were just way ahead. I mean, Victor used to just rip the legs off everybody in the fights during the.
Now everybody's doing it.
Yep.
So yeah, this good days.
Are you excited about that, Eddie? Doing the commentary?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, obviously, commentating live and being there, that's phenomenal.
Whole different level.
Yeah, well, I did a movie. I actually got my SAG card. I was in Glassjaw as a commentator.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I got lines in the movie and everything. It was cool. But the funny thing about it was the script was all screwed up. So they were rewriting the script. They're like, well, you've got experience, right, in boxing and all this. And I'm like, yeah. They say, just commentate what you see. And I did, and it worked out. And
That's
it was
awesome.
cool. Yeah, so yeah, I'm excited.
Is it just your first time besides that show commentating?
No, I did some guest commentating on a show out in England, 10th Legion, for one of my students, Eleanor, and I've done some guest commentating before.
Does it get you? I mean, I know it's different, but does it get you a little nervous beforehand? Like how do you
No.
feel? No, you're just ready to
His
go.
knowledge is too strong.
I'm
I
never
know,
nervous.
I know.
It's not like I'm walking into some place I can't walk out of. I know the game.
You're just more anxious. Like,
I'm excited.
Excited,
I'm
yeah.
listen, June 1st can't come quick enough.
So how did this conversation come about? Like obviously you guys know each other real well and everything.
I sat down
but-
and thought, who do I know that has the best look, that's the most qualified person to do this? And it came to me right away. I was like, nobody has more background in the entire sport than Eddie Millis.
Well, thank you.
Eddie Millis, man. Yeah.
That's very flattering.
Man.
I'm still always learning, but
And
Yeah,
that's
it's
why
exciting.
he's at the level he is, because he
Yeah.
understands you'll learn more every day.
How do you guys choose the fighters? Like, as far as like, is it like an audition thing? They call you, or you
know,
somebody you've been watching
For
a
years
while?
and years and years, people have been sending me downloads of,
The
back
video?
in the early days, it was VHSs, and then it was DVDs, and then it was download, but I receive probably 400 a month
Damn.
of people that send me fighting in small shows around the country or in a bar somewhere. I mean, I found Crazy Horse fighting for $20 in a nightclub in Ocala, and then included him putting up the boxing ring in a nightclub. And he was, after he'd beat everybody in that nightclub for like 6 months, Then he started boxing everybody with one hand tied behind his back. I said, "Oh, we got to get this guy in King of the Cage." And he had fought a few MMA fights prior to that, but he turned out to be one of the best entertainers of all time. I would only have to put one guy ahead of him, and that would probably be Quentin Jackson. Quentin Jackson is in my opinion, the perfect MMA fighter.
Yeah, people just don't know. Like Quentin, because I was training with him and helping him for a while, and that guy in the gym, he's cool, calm, and collective, and it's so fun. But when he gets in the ring, he's a whole different person, right?
Yeah, him and Henderson,
Yeah.
but Quentin is such a class act outside of it. He's funny, he's goofy, he acts mean, but he's one of the nicest, best persons you'll ever have to deal with. He really is.
Yeah, I see he's been going on a lot of podcasts lately too.
Yeah, he's doing well. It's so good to see him successful.
He's hilarious.
I saw him on one with Tank Abbott the other day, and I thought that was hysterical. I've had Tank in Cabo a couple times with me fishing, and I know what a handful Tank is. And Quentin and Uriah were with him, and that was bringing King of the Cage back completely to me.
And Tank seems really mellow now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so...
I had some pretty serious health issues. He just barely survived.
Yeah, you know what you need to do is you need to get Ken down here, Shamrock.
Oh man, I'd love to.
That would be dope.
Because
I remember watching him as a kid.
Ken is like, does Ken get the respect he deserves?
No.
He should. He should.
Well, we're the number one podcast in Inland Empire right now. So getting I feel like bringing people here, because I mean, just like you're bringing people to the Inland Empire.
Yep.
And back in the when I first started this, that wasn't my goal to bring people in for the Inland Empire. But things are happening so much. Eddie's been on here a few times already, and things are just growing. And I feel like, I mean, I want to just help people understand the talent that comes out of here, because there's so much talent from all over that comes out of here.
We get overlooked a little bit in the LA area. We really get overlooked. And that kind of pushed me a lot in the beginning, because I knew we had the talent. I had been out to the other shows. I had seen guys from other parts of the country. I had watched what our guys looked like going with 1 and 2 fights, fighting guys like when Joe Stevenson went to the Boss Rutan Invitational in Colorado, and he fought Jens Pulver, who had 20 professional fights, and Joe was fighting his second professional fight. He beat the first 2 guys in an 8-man tournament, and he got knocked out by Pulver in the finals. But you take that same Joe Stevenson and you give him 20 fights, and then you let him fight Jens Pulver, and I think he beats him 9 times out of 10 back then. Yeah. Not that Jens Pulver is not a great champion. He was a great champion, hit harder than anybody ever at 155 pounds. Just ask John Lewis or anybody that's ever trained with him. Jens Pulver can knock a train down with his punch. But we needed our guys to have a platform to be able to compete in as many fights as the guys from the Midwest. And I mean, it really, at one point, then it became California versus the Midwest. Eventually, Florida started putting on some shows, and Dan Lambert committed a lot of money for the American Top Team in Florida. He put a lot of money into the sport of MMA. He's really major responsible for everybody that came out of Florida. And, Matt Hume up in the north, the Northeast, the Northwest. Matt Hume, anytime somebody had to beat one of Monty Cox's guys from the Midwest, they went to Matt Hume up there in Seattle and trained him. And like Dennis Hallman beat Matt Hughes twice in less than 3 minutes. When Matt Hughes looked like he couldn't be beat, and he might have been 43 and 3. Hallman beat him twice in less than 2 minutes.
Everybody thought he was unbeatable for the longest time.
Yeah, Terry can attest that there's a lot of guys that never made it to the highest level, but easily could. How do I word this? Easily could have, given the right circumstances and not so many personal problems.
Yes.
Like we know destroyers that just were like.
Javi Vasquez was wicked. I mean, he really was. He was so nasty, and he was more of a wrestling jiu-jitsu guy.
It's very slick.
But very, very slick, and he just ran through everybody. He fought a fight for me against a black belt, Alberto Crane, and he lost the decision. But he blew his ACL out completely in the first round, and he fought round 2 and 3. He would go to throw a punch, and his leg would fold backwards, not this way forward. It would fold the other way, and he would fall down to hit his back. Yeah. And he was crying in between rounds, and he wouldn't let him stop the fight. And it was unbelievable. Javi Vasquez had a fight set up in King of the Cage where he was going to fight BJ Penn. And something ended up happening where the fight didn't happen. But Penn had committed to the fight, and I think that would have been a fight that would have put over the top because many people, viewed BJ Penn as being the best in the world at that time. And it would have been a great fight. Instead, Caro Uno ended up fighting him. And I had signed Caro Uno for a fight, and then that fight didn't go through. And then both those two guys ended up fighting somewhere else, and it turned out to be one of the great fights. But you never know how things are going to fall. I mean, health issues and training incidents, and you put everything you can together, and then you watch it unfold.
Yeah, this was the beginning. Like this whole thing was the beginning for Jim's, his organization, and we should definitely talk about Charles. And Tap Out, God rest his soul. What an amazing dude. But everybody hustled. Remember Tap Out in the little van and just giving away?
Well, I mean, in the first show in the tennis court,
Yeah.
I can remember them selling like 2 T-shirts.
Yeah.
And they split the money up so they had enough money to get home between the two of them. And I know Charles needed a little more money because it was his van.
Yeah.
Okay? And eventually they didn't have the funding to get into King of the Cage. Some guy stepped in with more money. So instead of selling a King of the Cage, they would set up a shop at a gas station up the street when you were coming to the show on the way to the show.
Hustlers.
And they
Because this show's about that,
Yes,
right?
yes.
About success.
They were tenacious,
And you look at how Tap Out made it, and no one gave them anything. No one gave Terry anything.
Yep.
And I think because this show is about, like we talked about
The journey, yes.
my success after MMA and to the escape room industry. Terry's, I'm bringing it up, but he's like one of the top cigar guys in the world now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So how do you? It's work ethic. So you can have one business, and then how do you become number one in another business? It's work ethic. It's not sitting on your ass and saying that you need a Saturday, Sunday off because I get weekends off. That weekends don't exist for us.
People ask me often, how do you do it? And I said, I just never know what day it is.
Yeah.
Like they'll ask me, there's a 30% chance if you ask me what day today is, I won't know unless I looked at a calendar because they all have the same goal when I wake up.
You're just like
Get
on the
everything I
run
can
that
done.
much.
Yeah.
You like
All the
cigars?
time.
Nah,
I love them. Yeah, I
There
love
you go.
Yeah,
them. A girl I was dating, she was big into cigars, and yeah, so I started smoking a lot of cigars with her, and I love them, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right on.
But okay, so there is like I want to get into that a little bit, if that's okay. So because How's Over Baz, when I bring people in here, and I would love to hear some of the answers that you would have to say too, because we asked a lot of these. We have some questions that we ask about entrepreneurship, and with the field you're in. How many people are in that field doing what you're doing at that level, right? I mean, not many.
No, not too many.
So it would be great to hear some of your answers. And
I mean, here's the real question. Outside of the UFC, very few people make money in this sport.
Yeah.
They all try to become the UFC.
Yeah.
And usually it's a couple guys that came up with an idea, spending somebody else's money, trying to compete with the UFC, losing millions of dollars.
Because it ain't their money.
Because it's not
Yeah.
their money.
And
this was something I used my own money, and I had maybe $25,000 in my account and $150,000 on my credit card.
That's what makes you different. The passion.
Yes.
You know what I mean, it's a passion.
I couldn't
behind
lose.
it.
I didn't have a
Work ethic,
choice.
yeah.
I didn't have a choice. It was $20,000 cash, $150,000 availability on a credit card.
No plan B.
No plan B.
That's exactly what I'm talking about, Eddie. Because that's the kind of stuff that I like to bring on here.
But you can't fake that.
No.
You know what I
At
mean?
all.
And I don't even think, like I was saying, that's my quote. You get a lion doesn't look in the mirror and say, I wish I was a lion. He already knows. That's my quote. Like, you are or you're not. Like, you're a wolf or you're a sheep. I'm sorry. It's the truth.
So with this game and what you guys are doing, could a fighter or even somebody as a businessman could they work off of just money alone? Like, I want to fight for money, and then
It's already been
I wanna do
shown
money,
that
like,
it doesn't work on money alone because people have tried,
Right.
and it failed so quickly too.
Yes, and people have put so much money into it. I sit down when I talk to people, and I've helped a couple people. Barry Meyer was a guy who used to come up and sit first row at the show and bought tickets for me for years at Saboba, and then raced up to Vegas and started doing an amateur show up there and asked me about, hey, how should I get this set up? I mean, we were on the phone for hours at a time, and he did very well with it. He passed away of something at a young age, which was sad. I don't know actually how it went down, and I think his brother continued to run it, but it's never been the same since. But the show was called Tough Enough, and
good show.
there was a lot of people out there that were trying to do things, and there was a formula that probably had, I want to say, about 90 things you had to do to put on an MMA event to have success and to have it be profitable. And you can get away with doing about 80. But if you do 70 or 60, you're not going to make money. What usually happens is a really rich, powerful guy will get into the sport, and he'll want to do it because it's sexy. It's a cool sport. It's fun to be around. There's pretty girls. There's violence. There's television. Everything you would want if you were a rich guy and you didn't have. Okay? The problem is once he starts losing money, then he starts making phone calls to his friends. Okay, hey, can you help me with this? Can you do this? And then he finds himself working. And then he finds himself working and not making money. And guys that have a lot of money that start working and find themselves in a full-time job that they're paying to do lose interest pretty fast.
And they don't want to do it no more. They don't want to work no more.
No, they don't want to work anymore. And why would you want to work? If you wake up in the morning and you say, I can work for $100 an hour doing this, and yet you can do something that you like for $20, but you have to pay $20 an hour to do it, you're going to stick with the $100. You know, it's that's what happens.
Yeah, well said.
That's perfect. Yeah, I love the way he says that, because you see people trying to come into businesses because it looks good.
Yeah.
I mean, just like, for instance,
And they think it's easy.
Yeah, just like, for instance, the podcast. I didn't come into this.
So you grew it organically.
Yeah, I grew it organically, but I came into it not even knowing that there was money in it. I had no clue what was going on with podcasting. I wanted to talk to other entrepreneurs, and because I had a business, I went onto somebody's podcast and I talked to them about my whole experience as an entrepreneur. But I was giving them the dirt, the stuff that nobody was giving them. They said. So then someone was like, "Hey, you should start it." So I started it, and I started bringing up people on, and I wouldn't let them just talk about the shine. I would dig into them,
Right.
Try to find out what kind of troubles have you got into, like, because we know as entrepreneurs that we're always going to go through times of like where you feel like this is I'm done. I don't know what I'm going to do. Where's this money going to come from now?
So you know stuff like athletic commissions, hiding documents, and you want to talk about that stuff?
Yeah, let's bring that up.
Shut you down the day before your show, and you already sold 3,000 to 5,000 tickets.
Highway patrols losing your background check, so it takes an extra 6 months to get your license.
Dang.
The venue got a report that there might be some biker gangs showing up, so they want to add 10 uniformed police officers at $90 an hour for a 6-hour minimum.
Right. When the officer's making $30 an hour, okay, back then
We have to pay it.
and you have to pay $90, so the venue can take some extra money and the city can take some extra money on
They're
it.
making just
Yeah,
as much as the fucking fighter.
everybody sees something that's going on and tries
Dang.
to figure out. So really, the theft factor is one of the 90 points.
Entrepreneurship is mentally, I won't say physically for everyone, but mentally harder than working a 9 to 5. I'm sorry, it's just the way it is.
Yeah, 9 to 5, you already know what you're going to do.
Yeah, you're okay. Let's show
Everything
up, do
said
your
it.
job,
Yeah.
and then leave. As an entrepreneur, you have to right the ship. And in the storm, a lot of it's a storm because there's these variables that you can't really account for or you can't control, but you have to deal with.
But how
And-
much better do you sleep at night doing it? Usually because you're exhausted.
Yeah.
But even the occasional night where you haven't ran yourself into the ground and you're not exhausted,
Yeah.
you still get to sleep well.
The thing that got me when I was promoting too was, you give tickets, some fighters some tickets to sell tickets. They need to make some extra money. They're out there hustling. And then the fighter pulls out of the show and never gives you the money for the tickets. And you work so hard to put this show on. And for a while, did you ever feel like fighters just think you're making all these millions?
Well, you're always the bad guy.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how nice you're going to be.
Yeah.
You're always the guy that was making money off their sweat and blood.
Yeah.
Because you see their sweat in the cage.
Yeah.
They never see what you do.
No,
So they just
they never
assume
see our sweat and blood.
you sit at ringside, smoke a cigar. But that's always what it's going to be.
Right.
And after a year of it bothering me, I got comfortable with it.
Yeah,
I said,
yeah.
I don't need their approval.
Yeah.
I said, people used to say, I'm doing it for the sport. I said, I'm not doing it for the sport. I'm doing it to make money. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
But if I continue to make money, everybody else is going to have an opportunity because of it. If I don't make money and I fold like all these other shows, then you will have to go out and look for new opportunities every single week. And that's the difference. I can provide a guy with 50 fights over the next 10 years if that's what he wants. Other people can't say that.
Well, the thing is, too, I mean, it gets annoying, and I know what you're talking about. We start this because we love it, okay? But there's a point we have to make money, or we can't survive. We can't live. We have families to feed. So these motherfuckers don't understand that, and they just want to just ride your coattail or make more money than you. They're just like, I'm the star. Who are you? You know, like that kind of shit, right? And they don't understand that this is still a business at the end of the day. So we're going to do things, and we have to be cutthroat. Not saying like in a bad way, but like there's rules, and these rules have to be fucking followed.
And if you don't follow enough of those rules, you can't make money.
Yeah.
And guess what? I understood that because I was a coach with fighters and managing them, and I also promoted. And once I was promoting, I got to understand, wow.
I mean, how old were you, Eddie, when you started the Shark Tank?
Shit.
25?
Young.
What the fuck? Really? That's dope.
25, just, giving up on everything. I mean, I run places. I go to WinStar Casino in Dallas, Thackerville, Texas, and I got guys walking down from, who's the singer from Jersey Boys?
Oh,
I know what you're
Frankie
talking about.
Valley.
Yeah.
Frankie Valley.
I got to that show. You got me tickets.
So guys come off the stage that are backup singers for Frankie Valley, and they know him because he was in a band with him when they were kids.
Yeah.
He gave up a lot of stuff to become a fight coach.
You know that? How the fuck did you know that?
So you're
I didn't even know that, Eddie.
All right, so you be singing and kicking
No,
ass.
hold on.
Hey, he was a boy band superstar. Let me tell you, and he gave it up to be in an MMA world.
Singing and kicking ass. That's what it
He's
is.
razzing me. But the truth is, I did go to college, and when I was in college, I was in a,
Boy, but it's, you
music
know what I mean?
program. No,
You did it for the girls. You did it for the girls. You did it for the girls. You know what I mean?
Even though it sounds bad, those guys that were up there were world class, and if they were even talking to him, he must have been somebody special.
Damn, that's crazy, Eddie.
no,
You guys-
they were up there.
Frankie Valley's back 4 seasons.
These are the backup singers for Frankie Valley that are talking about how are you still not doing it? You were so good, and I'm like,
I didn't know this about you, Eddie.
No,
What else?
Eddie
What
got
else?
secrets.
What else?
We got to keep you coming on the show with Eddie so he can keep talking.
I went to college. Everybody that does know me
Right.
really knows me. I like musical theater.
Right.
I like that. I love Phantom of the Opera, Les Mis, all that stuff. So, yeah, but
Miss Saigon.
Miss Saigon's great.
yeah.
Yeah. You are.
Okay. Oh shit.
Anyway, the thing about it is you really got to go where your passion is, right? But for me, this is about Terry today, but for me, martial arts is just a segment of who I am, right? But yeah, I love to do other things, and you can do other things and be successful. Hence, I own escape rooms and create the escape rooms now and write the algorithms and all this crazy stuff. But I'm still in the MMA business. Terry's King of the Cage, promoter, all that, and has a cigar company now.
It all takes being able to see things before it happens. You have to be able to play out your situation over and over and again, because you only get so many opportunities at certain key moments in your life. And if you're prepared for them, you're going to make it. If you're not, you're going to figure out something else you're going to have to start doing later.
So a question for both of you.
Yeah,
When was it, or what were you doing when you're like, you know what, I want to start promoting these fights, or I see myself doing this, I want to help other fighters, or
I was managing a chain of health clubs at 25 years old. I was doing pretty well back then. I was like making $15,000-$16,000 a month, so I thought I was a big baller, and back then that was a lot for me, for the family that I grew up in and stuff. I was doing very well, and I walked away from it completely to start throwing fights. And my mother and father looked at me like, "Are you crazy?" My dad thought it was cool. My mother's a school teacher, so she was like, "I mean, what are you doing?" But I just knew that this is what I wanted to do. I had seen it, and I went to one of the guys that owned one of the gyms. I eventually became a partner before I left, but the guy that owned 3 of the 8 gyms that were involved, I said, I've got $20,000 in my account right now. I've got $150,000 in my credit card. I just bought new cars. I just bought my house. You know, but I think I want to do this MMA thing. He goes, don't wait, do it. And he told me that. So now he's probably 80, and he lives up in like Bent, Oregon, up in the middle of nowhere up in Oregon, and calls me up once a month, and I send him cigars once a month. It's kind of like my payment for his experience, his pearls of wisdom back in the day, to give me the kick and tell me, you know, don't be settled for this. Do something that you love. Which reminds me, I need to send him some cigars pretty soon.
I want to ask you though, because I was asked this. I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs should be asked this and see how they got out of it, because for our viewers especially. So think of a time where it was getting so tough, so hard, that there was a moment where you were just like, I don't know how I'm going to do this anymore. And do you
There were
know
4 or 5 points that I specifically remember like it was yesterday. And every time I made a bunch of money and I'm like, oh my God, I got a bunch of money here, I had to risk it all to go to the next level. Okay, now I got to risk it to go into the video and DVD market. Now I got to risk it to go into pay-per-view. And if the pay-per-view doesn't sell, what am I going to do? Because I'll pay this much more money to put it on pay-per-view. I've got to do the marketing for that. But they're going to hold that money for 6 months. So if I put on 3 pay-per-view shows in 6 months, one every other month, now I've got to fund, $250,000 more in production over those next 3 shows. So it didn't matter. And I kept thinking to myself, when do I not have to go risk it all to go up another level? Yeah. And it just never ended. It was always, okay, you got to do it. And then I realized that's just part of what we choose to do in our life.
He could have retired, right? This is true. You could have retired several times.
Yeah.
He had the house. He's got the house. He's got the cars, everything that you want. So I think
I stayed in it for the love. I mean, the first check from Pro Elite was $6 million, and that was like ridiculous amounts of money. And I had another 6 supposedly coming over the next 5 years, even though none of that came. But that was like, their initial offer was $250,000. It went up to $13 million by the time it was done. So it was big. But to take a company, to build it up, to sell it, and then to be able to get it back. I had to put $400,000 back into the company after the first year.
When you sold it?
Oh man, it was great. People go, "Where'd you do it?" I went to McDonald's.
I'm out.
I went to McDonald's. No, because I agreed to keep running it for the other parent company and keep it profitable while they were trying to build that hedge fund up. And the only part that remained profitable of the entire thing was King of the Cage. So when I got it back, it was still profitable.
Why couldn't they do it?
Because they had a belief that certain things weren't there that I had already experienced. It was like IMG hadn't gotten into MMA at the time. And they're like, well, we're going to go to IMG and they're going to pay us this much for television rights. I said, I've already had this conversation with IMG. It was after I sold it to them, I went into a meeting, a big room, all their execs in there, and I'm sitting with my attorney, and they're saying, okay, we want to show you our ideas. So they're showing me all their ideas, and I'm like, I looked over and I said, hey, this isn't going to work. They're going to be out of money November 15th of next year. He goes, well, tell them. I said, I can't tell them. They just wrote me this big check. I can't tell them that. He goes, tell them. So I told them that. And I said, I sugarcoated a little bit. I said, I like you're doing this, and this, and I think this is nice. I said, but here's the problem. I've already talked to IMG. You're not going to get that money. The money that you think you're going to get by putting all these shows together, half the stuff you bought, you have the waiver signed, so you don't have any real right to it. You're going to get sued on all these things because all the fighters, none of these organizations you bought, the fighters signed waivers for every show. Here's my paperwork. I have every one. It was they said, oh, okay, well, you don't see it working. Just go ahead and run King of the Cage. You can come into the office once in a great while every time you want to come in a great while. We really don't need it to go. It turned out they ran out of money November 9th. I missed it by 6 days. 6 days. Wow. I missed my prediction of them running out of money by. And they were all nice guys.
That's because you basically have the blueprint for what you're
doing.
I'd
already experienced what they thought was going to work.
Seen it.
And there were a few things that could have worked, but I knew that several things, like, okay, we're going to get $80 million from that. I said, IMG is not going to jump on MMA in its infancy right now and put pro soccer aside. I said, you see what they do with pro soccer, and you're transferring that amount of money to MMA. It's going to take years to get to that point. I said, and that money's not going to come in. They're not just going to hand you checks for that. And I turned out to be right. Unfortunately, I would have liked it to work, but they
It's wild because
they blew through $50 million in 2 years.
that's something like I feel like a true entrepreneur that knows the craft that they're doing can understand. You can have a whole team, but only one person sees through all the cracks.
Yes.
All of the big promoters and everybody that's doing well has been in it since its infancy. Is that the truth, right? You got Scott Coker, right?
Yep.
You know, Scott Coker, martial artist, you know. Kickboxer, sold his gym, made a lot of money, knows his stuff. So, yeah, you just can't come out from a whole...
You can't even teach somebody brand new this, right? There's no way somebody can come in and be like, and you can just teach all of it because it's something that you see so clearly.
You'd have to live it for a period of time. Here's a good example. Shingo Kashiwagi went to work for me. He was on my hockey team. Great hockey player. Actually was an alternate to my understanding for the Japanese Olympic hockey team. And I was playing hockey with him, and I said, hey, you ever see Pride over there in Japan? He goes, oh, I love that stuff. I love MMA. And I started talking about, so I own King of the Cage. He goes, no way, I've heard of King of the Cage. Sakuraba did a special on you over in Japan. The Fuji TV has you on like almost every month, talks about the results from your shows. Some of the Japanese guys that are coming over to fight in King of the Cage, we get clips from that. I said, why don't you do this? Why don't you come work for me? So he came work for me, did some basic stuff. Eventually he became the matchmaker for King of the Cage. After about 4 years of matchmaker, and I was hard on him. I'm hard on my guys because they're either going to survive or they're not going to make it, He couldn't handle it, went back to Japan. And then realized after about a year back there that, that's what the world is. The world's full of hard stuff. It's not full of easy stuff. Went to work in Japan, has become very successful now in Japan. And we talk all the time now. And he's a matchmaker for Rizin, which is the former Pride organization, the big organization in Japan. Yeah. And I believe he's actually putting on a Pacquiao fight and did the matchmaking for it, a Pacquiao fight in July of this year.
Wow.
Oh, let's go.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, we can have anything we want over there. They're really good to us.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, when Saki Kabara, who's his boss and the owner of Rizin, and Shingo and Coker were in town, they called me down to San Diego and said, hey, Scott's doing his last show. You got to come down for a dinner. So we had dinner that night in San Diego. I actually had to be in Mexico the next day or I would have stayed for the fight. But it was a really good night. Really good night. And Shingo's a heck of a guy.
Wow, you've tapped into so many. There's so many different people to bring in for what you do. It's like you tap into so many, and you really think about it, it's different genres.
Yep.
And it's whole different businesses.
I try to stay away from people who've been in the business to bring in because I want them to learn it.
You already said it, mindset.
The way, yeah. They believe certain things are right. They've already learned some things that are wrong sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense because you already have your venue is just completely successful. So you already have the roadmap of how to do it and what needs to be done right. So if they come from somewhere else, they're going to have all these bad habits. Mm-hmm. So you bring them in the way you want to bring them in. Boom. You get
Groom them.
Yeah, for the way you want to.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
The toughest thing is to keep them once you get them to that level. Then everybody wants them,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's no different than, how many guys that I trained for 6 months and they were like white belts.
Yes.
And all of a sudden they have a gym in San Bernardino and they're black belts and they're running an MMA gym. I'm
2 months.
My mind. I could count 2 or 3 of those, yeah. You know what I'm talking about?
I know exactly who you're talking about.
We got so many stories. You got to remember, we got stories like over the years.
It's crazy.
We'll have to do a part 2.
And bring Phil in, huh? All you guys.
Man.
All you guys.
Wow, that
to
would
do
be
a
fun.
part 2 stories.
Dude, I'm so down. It'd be cool if you come in and you talk about the fights right before they come on.
Yeah, Phil fought in that tennis court show in Corona on the 12-step recovery ranch. I mean, he
Wait a minute. On a 12
yes.
on a recovery ranch
It
on a
was
super living
12-step.
home.
I hired all the recovering drug addicts and alcoholics to sweep out the tennis court, to put the blue tarp up, the blue tarps you buy from Home Depot, so that nobody could see into the tennis court. I had some local band up on a platform as the DJ up on the top, and I had Judo Gene LaBelle, who was who was Ronda Rousey's judo coach, her Olympic judo coach, as the referee for the fight.
Wait, we got ring car girls that don't know, like...
You can't
What's
take
your-
your top off. You can't take your top
Yeah,
off.
I
Well,
mean-
well, what we had is we had all these
seriously.
nice strippers. Yeah, we had all these nice hot girls, right? That were like professional dancers and this and that. And then we had one stripper. And once like one girl would upshow the other girl, and then the stripper just went boom.
They start battling.
10-year-old kids in the crowd and parents. And,
That's so great. You remember that? Oh, my God.
Katana
tickets for that one.
Yeah.
How could anybody forget Katana Baker?
Oh, wow. Like, take this.
We
That's
need,
crazy.
we need tickets for the next one.
They still doing that?
No.
Wow, that's wild, man. I know he was telling us about a story when he bit the cup. When Phil built the
Phil?
cup and
Yeah.
he's bleeding and blood's
New
all
Year's
coming
Eve
out.
party, yeah. Yeah, it's just crazy. Yeah. Or like with Vegas, like, you know, you got guys that are bump into him. He'd lay on the ground and say, you want a ticket standing up or on the ground? He'd be laying on the ground in the middle of the casino. Absolutely insane. Anyway. Yeah. It's
So those were wild. We got to get you guys all on
Can't
for
wait till
something
June
like
1st.
that.
I can't wait till June 1st.
yeah, June 1st, you know.
Yeah, tell us
like-
a little bit about the card for June 1st.
Well, Edson Gomez and Richie Palomino
Yeah.
are fighting in the main event, and they're two guys that, like I said, these are two guys that won't look to hold each other down. They will look to see who has the toughest chin that night. They will trade until somebody falls.
Five rounds?
Yeah. It's 5-3.
I trained Edson
5
for a long
rounds.
time.
Oh, really?
But I've
Yep.
been so busy, and he just messaged me actually, like, "Hey, coach, can I come by?" But he's great. I mean, this is a guy that he's laughing backstage and just having a good time. He loves what he does, so I think it's going to be a great fight. I know it's going to be a great fight.
Edson's like a little bit of a junior David Gomez.
It'll be dope.
He really is. I mean, it's just a play. You know when you watch this guy fight that it's going to be a great fight and everybody's going to go bananas all night.
Yeah, that's it. They don't play it safe.
No.
Yeah, they don't play it safe.
It's a good one.
You have to put yourself in harm's way to put on a great fight. A perfect example, Manny Pacquiao laid it on the line every night, but he was in range of getting hit, and every once in a while he'd get clipped, and the guy from Mexico clipped him pretty good one time and knocked him cold. People thought, man, was Pacquiao over? No, Pacquiao was still at the peak of his game. But to put on a great performance and to be a warrior, Evander Holyfield is another great one. They're going to stand in front of you and show, plain and simple, I'm the tougher man.
Take the risk.
And a lot of the guys in the sports don't take those risks anymore.
Like, I feel like I've
And
built up.
that's why boxing was exposed, because that's why MMA had a chance to grow so much. When boxing guys stopped standing in the pocket and trading punches in the heavyweight division.
Who's the guy that
Wait, that's
he
why-
tells him to go to the middle of the ring and fight with him, and he knocked him out. I think it was like the last, like 10
But
or 5
let's talk
seconds
about
of
the
it.
boxing match on Saturday. Like, as
Oh, yeah.
as a promoter and as a trainer, like, I was like, where's the heavyweights gone?
Yep.
I mean, I'm not
It is,
taking
yeah.
anything away from Usyk, but
No, but Mike Tyson,
Yeah.
Evander Holyfield,
Larry
Lennox
Holmes.
Lewis, Larry Holmes.
I know the heavyweights are nothing like they used to be. That's for sure.
I mean, you just knew you were going to see two guys thump each other.
Yeah.
Foreman,
Everybody's not built the same
Frazier.
anymore. Not built
No.
the same.
no, I mean, even like you see Fury wipe his nose. I think the 7th round he got hit where his nose got broken or whatever, but he didn't seem like he was a dog right then. And
'Cause now
there's
it's
so
about the
many
money.
things I think he could have done, but.
That's why I said now it's about the money. The pay wasn't as big as it is now. You know what I mean?
Right.
But even with sports, you know what I mean? You give somebody this much money, of course you're not going to work that hard because they know they're going to get a check as long as they're present.
Right.
You know what I mean? But
That's a great point.
Yeah, you
So-
can get a big check without being tested nowadays. Back in the days, you had to be tested several times to get a big check.
Right.
And that changes. People go out and fight to not lose instead of go out to try and dominate a fight.
But we can talk about this too. We have a lot of fighters
I know
that just
exactly where you're going.
Exactly. We know we got fighters that just fight for the glory. They don't care about the money. They don't care. They just want to be on a poster. They want
true passion.
to.
True passion.
Well, passion, yeah, but also,
They just like it.
yeah. But there's
Some guys
some
just-
that want to
some
make
guys
it.
just
It's
enjoy
an
it.
unexplainable
But they
feeling.
want to
You
make.
can't- yeah.
There's also a lot of guys too that just
For
did it
status,
because they
fame.
want to. They want to be somebody.
Yes.
And they're really not, but they want to be somebody. So, carrying your poster into a Starbucks or.
That's
or,
it for them. That's
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 their
when
thing.
they made it. Yeah.
It's
But the
status,
problem
Instagram.
with that is
that's their Super Bowl, and that's the guys you want on your undercard. Those are the guys
They'll
you
fight harder,
want
yeah.
that feel like this is the greatest thing that ever, because they treat it that way.
And they'll last longer too.
Yes.
Actually.
I mean, literally carry their poster around all day because they were so happy that they got a
Hell
chance
yeah.
to do
What
this.
about a guy that won a belt that
He wore the belt. Or what?
I think he wore the belt for a year and a half. Like, I don't think he took it off.
No, yeah. They carried the belts everywhere they go. I mean, daycare, supermarket,
Yes.
whatever. But,
In the supermarket with his belt on.
Yeah, so it's interesting, but it means a lot to some people, and the journey to get there, it's not easy.
Yeah, for sure. Nothing worth it is.
But for everybody involved, for the fighter, for the trainer, for
Sure.
the promoter, all the way around, it's a lot of work.
Wow, man. I mean, I want to see where this is going to go for King of the Cage.
Well, he's
right
got to
now.
do
I'm
4
very
times
interested.
a year. That's what I want.
So I got some good news. I've got a couple entertainment directors
Yeah.
that were entertainment directors at places I had been doing for many, many years
Yeah.
that have moved into this market, which are going to be able to give me the winter market. I want to stay at the Diamond for the summer show. I really like the summer shows outdoors. I think they're great, but I don't want to do any more. After doing a couple February shows, Pain in the Rain and Wet and Wild.
yeah.
I mean, those probably each took 3 or 4 years out of my life trying to put on fights in the rain.
Yeah, this is outdoor, right?
These
It's
are
gonna be
outdoors,
great.
yeah.
June 1st is outdoor.
Underneath
June 1st is outdoors,
underneath
yes.
the
San
stars.
Bas-
Baseball stadium in San Bernardino. It's at the
The 66ers stadium.
yes.
Oh, okay, downtown San Bernardino.
Are you
yeah.
ready?
So I put a big stage out at second base.
First show for me.
Put a big stage out at second base,
Okay.
and then I put 40 tables on the floor, and then I have a ringside barrier that's 12 feet around inside the cage, and that's where you guys will hang out.
Well, I'm so down. I can't wait,
yeah.
man. I'm so hyped. For
Yeah,
that.
you'll be from me to the wall from the fight.
Wow.
And when you're that close and somebody hits somebody, you feel every punch. It's like, "Ooh, that was a good one." You know?
That's dope.
4 p.m. right, and then we got Zach,
Yep.
who's going to be co-hosting with me, co-commentating Zach, and then it's going to be great. Lots of
Hyped,
great fights.
man. I can't wait. I love it, man. We got to definitely get you back on, though.
Appreciate it.
I'd
Appreciate you
love
guys
to be
coming.
back
Appreciate
on.
you guys coming.
Yeah, we appreciate you coming on. So our slogan is "Shed the Sheep." If you can just look at the camera and say "Shed the Sheep,"
Shed the sheep.
Shed the sheep.
shed the
right.
sheep. We appreciate you guys coming on again. Check out King of the Cage June 1st, and Howls Over Baz. I'm Jacob Casas,
I'm Rico Savage.
and we are out.